Whispers turned to gasps when Queen Camilla's private physician made a quiet but devastating recommendation behind closed doors. Step away, or risk irreversible decline. As her health faltered under growing pressure, the real reason sent shockwaves through the monarchy. Catherine's meteoric popularity was not just a public triumph, it was a private threat. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The first signs were easy to dismiss. A stumble during a garden reception at Highgrove, a trembling hand during a Commonwealth Zoom appearance. But what seemed like fleeting symptoms were quickly escalated after Camilla reportedly collapsed in a private corridor at Windsor Castle. Attending medics were swift, discreet, and silent. Yet, within days, a trusted royal physician was summoned for a full evaluation behind sealed doors. What he found stunned even the most seasoned aides: stress-induced arrhythmia, erratic sleep cycles, and signs of emotional instability that could no longer be denied. The formal assessment was brutal in its simplicity. Her Majesty's condition was deteriorating not just from age or duty, but from unrelenting psychological strain rooted in a singular, unspoken rivalry. The report, described by insiders as clinical yet alarmingly personal, outlined a pattern of cognitive fatigue linked explicitly to Catherine's soaring public image. The term institutional comparison stress appeared in the memo, followed by a stinging observation. Camilla was battling not just the weight of duty, but the overwhelming shadow cast by the Princess of Wales. For years, she had weathered public skepticism and slow acceptance. But as Catherine's warmth, diplomacy, and near-mythical grace reached global heights, Camilla's space within the monarchy seemed to shrink by the day. What had once been a contested crown now felt like borrowed time. The physician's recommendation was unmistakable. Reduce royal appearances, retreat from active engagements, and avoid public comparison triggers. But the most chilling moment came during a private conversation with King Charles. According to a senior household member, the doctor did not mince words. She cannot compete, and the effort to do so is breaking her down. It wasn't just physical exhaustion. It was the psychological toll of being constantly measured against someone younger, beloved, and widely seen as the future of the monarchy. And Camilla knew it. Yet when confronted with the findings, Camilla didn't retreat in sorrow. She exploded in disbelief. Aides described her fury as sharp and silent, a denial wrapped in regal restraint. She locked herself away for hours, refusing communication, emerging only to demand that no adjustments be made to her schedule. But palace staff noticed the shift-cancelled calls, missed briefings, and late-night pacing behind closed doors. The Queen, consort, was unraveling, not in scandal or disgrace, but in the slow, painful realization that she had become an afterthought in her own reign. But if the doctor's verdict shattered Camilla's inner circle, what unfolded next would ignite an emotional reckoning that the monarchy could no longer contain. As Catherine's radiant presence captivated the world, Camilla found herself eclipsed not by accident, but by a tidal wave of admiration the palace could no longer suppress. What once simmered as polite tension between two royal women has now erupted into an unspoken war of image, legacy, and survival. From the moment Catherine stepped onto the global stage with grace and resolve, the tide began to shift. Her recent Commonwealth tour, marked by empathetic speeches and confident diplomacy, drew not just applause, but devotion. Crowds roared not simply out of respect for her title, but from something deeper belief. Approval ratings surged to heights unseen since the days of Diana, positioning Catherine as not only the future queen, but the embodiment of modern royalty. Every photo, every gesture, every moment became viral currency in a monarchy desperate for relevance. In contrast, Camilla's engagements began to recede into the background, increasingly omitted from coverage, or at best, tucked beneath glowing headlines of Catherine's appearances. The media's lens sharpened the contrast. Where Catherine's initiatives were celebrated as visionary, Camilla's were politely acknowledged and quickly forgotten. It wasn't just the public shifting, it was the palace machinery responding in kind. Behind closed doors, senior aides began to reassign prime ceremonial duties. Catherine's presence was prioritized, Camilla's was negotiated. At formal events, tension crackled through the silence. Aides later described cold greetings, forced smiles, and the kind of fragile civility that only barely masked years of unresolved rivalry. One insider confided that Camilla began arriving at events strategically late, a subtle attempt to avoid side-by-side comparisons that had become emotionally unbearable. But this wasn't simply a matter of optics, it was an institutional crisis brewing beneath tradition. The palace's internal communications team, tasked with protecting both women's images, found themselves torn. Should they continue presenting Camilla as the reigning queen consort, or lean into what the public clearly wanted, a future that already belonged to Catherine? Confidential memos from royal press officers reportedly used coded phrases like public energy imbalance and legacy overlap, indicating that the competition wasn't accidental, it was systemic. As one PR advisor allegedly warned in a heated briefing, "You can't have two queens not in the public eye." Charles, caught in the middle, remained frozen, loyal to his wife, yet acutely aware of the public pulse. He reportedly refused to take sides. Instead, he chose silence, a decision that only deepened Camilla's isolation. Every time Catherine was applauded, Camilla felt another thread in her fragile authority unravel. The ghosts of the past returned with painful irony. For many observers, the situation echoed Diana's haunting legacy. Once again, a younger, beloved woman was being elevated in the public's heart, while Camilla was left to weather the comparison alone. And while the outside world cheered Catherine's elegant ascent, inside palace walls, Camilla was battling not just perception, but panic. The royal family's internal network was thrown into chaos when a sealed envelope arrived at Clarence's house marked private, physician's directive. Its contents? A brutal truth. Camilla's condition had worsened, but the deeper threat was not medical, it was political, and it was accelerating. The envelope arrived early in the morning, hand-delivered by Dr. Hammond himself under direct instruction that no intermediaries be involved. Its burgundy velvet seal, embossed with the physician's personal insignia, signaled the seriousness within. Upon opening it, the king was met with language more damning than diagnostic. The queen consort, the report stated plainly, was suffering from situational anxiety aggravated by competitive public exposure, a phrase which, in courtier terms, meant the palace was now facing a psychological emergency sparked by Catherine's growing dominance. It was no longer just emotional discomfort, it was a recognized medical crisis, brought on by relentless comparison, public scrutiny, and the quiet torment of knowing the public had chosen their favorite. Within the report was an even harsher phrase: psychological deterioration due to public scrutiny and comparative rejection. Camilla, it appeared, was absorbing the cost of existing in a monarchy that was rapidly reorienting around someone else. Her condition had spiraled to the point where rest was no longer optional. Dr. Hammond's prescription wasn't subtle. He advised a full 90-day withdrawal from all frontline royal duties. No state events, no public appearances, no ceremonial obligations. A complete retreat cloaked in medical necessity, but understood internally as a recalibration of power. It was a tactical pause for her health, yes, but also for the optics of a monarchy unraveling beneath the surface. Camilla's reaction was instant and absolute. She refused to acknowledge the report publicly. Not a word was uttered in meetings, not a single sentence released by her office. Internally, however, the silence was deafening. Charles was left holding a report that demanded action, watching as his wife spiraled into further isolation while the institution held its breath. His position became untenable. On one hand, there was a woman he loved, cracking under pressure and clinging to her role like a lifeline. On the other, there was the crown, increasingly fragile, increasingly dependent on Catherine to project stability and strength. The king's internal conflict deepened as advisors began to break rank. Some pushed for the directive to be followed immediately, fearing a public incident if Camilla continued unchecked. Others urged compassion, warning that forcing her into retreat could appear callous. But all were united on one point: the monarchy could not afford chaos. Charles, paralyzed by loyalty and responsibility, delayed the decision. He buried himself in protocol meetings, postponed public responses, and pretended the envelope hadn't changed everything. But as the palace struggled to contain the truth, a new voice emerged from within, authoritative, sharp, and wholly unexpected. As Charles tried to manage a crumbling reality, another unexpected voice would emerge, one that Camilla never thought would turn against her. When Princess Anne marched into the private drawing room at Windsor, no one anticipated what she was about to say. The blunt royal enforcer, loyal to duty above sentiment, confronted Camilla with a stunning ultimatum: step aside, or risk the institution itself unraveling. The conversation lasted less than 20 minutes, but its consequences would echo through the monarchy. Anne, known for her no-nonsense demeanour and unwavering commitment to the crown, had grown increasingly alarmed by the gridlock behind palace doors. Ceremonial schedules had been postponed, planning meetings dissolved into arguments, and patronage transitions delayed without explanation, all because of Camilla's growing reluctance to participate. Her health struggles were becoming more apparent, yet her refusal to formally step back was causing a vacuum the monarchy could no longer afford. Anne, once silent out of familial respect, had reached her limit. "This isn't about feelings. It's about functionality," she said flatly, according to a senior courtier who overheard part of the exchange. And with those words, Camilla's illusion of control began to fracture. Anne didn't come empty-handed. She had already spoken with key royal aides and advisors, who confirmed that several ceremonial duties had been quietly shifted. Catherine had begun taking Camilla's place at multiple key events, not officially, but undeniably. Sophie, too, had stepped into a stabilizing role, covering Commonwealth outreach and engagements where Camilla's absence could no longer be disguised. The monarchy was already adapting. Anne's presence in the room that day was merely to confirm what had already started. She told Camilla plainly, the institution must come first. Catherine was prepared, capable, and had proven her loyalty to the crown in both silence and action. It was not a challenge. It was a declaration. What followed was not rage, but collapse. A staffer nearby reportedly witnessed Camilla seated in stunned silence for nearly an hour, her hands trembling as she refused assistance. She did not speak. She did not cry. She simply stared ahead, as if hearing what she had long feared, that her reign was being stripped not by scandal or abdication, but by merit. The woman once branded as the survivor of royal storms was now the casualty of a quieter, more graceful upheaval. Charles, upon hearing of Anne's confrontation, remained motionless. Sources suggest he did not reach out to Anne, nor did he defend Camilla's position. His silence only widened the chasm between brother and sister. To Anne, it was confirmation that the king could no longer act decisively, and so others would have to. The monarchy could not be endangered by indecision. The world was watching, and Catherine, though silent, was rising. But even as Anne demanded resolution, a larger plan was already being discussed behind closed doors, one that would mark the beginning of the end. In a rare gathering at Sandringham, a clandestine circle of senior royals met under strict confidentiality. No press, no advisors, just legacy protectors, strategizing the unimaginable. How to transition Queen Camilla into early retirement without destroying the monarchy's delicate balance. The location was no coincidence. Sandringham, long known for its private tradition-bound air, had hosted some of the most consequential royal decisions in recent memory. But this meeting, secretive, charged, and fraught with consequence, felt like something far more fragile. Around the table sat four pivotal figures: Prince William, Princess Anne, the Duke of Edinburgh, and the Archbishop of Canterbury. Notably absent were courtiers, aides, or even Charles himself. This was not a planning session. It was an intervention disguised as strategy, a desperate effort to preserve unity as Camilla's collapse threatened to fracture the monarchy's front-facing image. The group had been assembled under a code name Operation Evergrey, chosen to reflect the plan's dual purpose: transition Camilla away from the spotlight while preserving her dignity in public narrative. It was, at its heart, an act of controlled retreat. The first step involved rerouting several royal patronages. Catherine and Sophie had already taken on the responsibilities in practice, This plan would make the shift official, though unannounced. The idea was simple: let the public adjust without realizing it. Let Camilla fade from the ceremonial forefront, while her presence remained symbolically intact. William, increasingly protective of Catherine's momentum and wary of half measures, advocated for clarity. He argued that shielding Camilla through silence would only deepen speculation and invite chaos when the truth inevitably emerged. "We cannot preserve trust by pretending," he reportedly told the others, a phrase that drew silence across the table. Anne, ever the institution's spine, disagreed. Her approach was rooted in precedent. The crown moves subtly, never publicly acknowledges fracture, and never, ever, allows sentiment to drive headlines. It wasn't a debate between right and wrong. It was a battle between two generations of survival tactics. The Archbishop, caught between generational ideologies, served as mediator and moral compass. His concern wasn't only for Camilla's role, but for her soul. He reportedly urged the others to remember her decades-long struggle for acceptance, her loyalty to Charles, and the quiet endurance she had shown through scorn and isolation. "Dignity," he said, "is not a luxury. It is the only thing we must not allow her to lose." That sentence, soft, yet immovable, shifted the room. Operation Evergrey would proceed, but it would do so with reverence, not removal. By the end of the day, consensus was reached. The plan would move forward in principle: slow reassignment of duties, gradual public distancing, and a carefully crafted narrative of health-focused reprieve. There would be no official statement, no dramatic resignations, just the quiet exit of a queen who had given all she could. The final decision, however, rested with Charles. He alone could approve it, and yet the king had not been informed. Not yet. But before the operation could be deployed, Camilla would make a last-ditch move, one that caught even Charles off guard. What should have been a quiet trooping the colour turned into a silent storm when Camilla defied her medical orders, appearing unannounced on the Buckingham balcony beside Catherine. What cameras didn't capture was the whispered confrontation that followed once the curtains closed. It was supposed to be a carefully choreographed appearance, slimmed down, symbolic, and serene. The royal family, led by King Charles, was set to present a united, composed image. Behind the scenes, aides had ensured Camilla would be absent, citing rest and recovery. Her doctors had been clear: no high-stakes public events, no adrenaline spikes, and certainly no balcony appearances under global scrutiny. Yet, minutes before the curtain was drawn, Camilla emerged. Unaccompanied, unscheduled, and defiant, she took her place beside the king, with Catherine just 2 steps away, and for a moment, the monarchy froze. What followed was not celebration, but contrast. As the national anthem began and the crowd roared, the volume shift was unmistakable. The cheers surged the moment Catherine stepped forward, while Camilla's presence was acknowledged only with polite applause. The imbalance hung thick in the air, and though the royal faces remained composed, body language betrayed the truth. Lip readers across social media quickly dissected a brief exchange between Prince William and his father. William appeared to say something sharp, clipped and urgent, while Charles nodded once, slowly, with what looked like resignation. It was confirmation to many. This appearance had not been approved. Catherine, ever measured, responded with grace under pressure. She stepped back subtly, shifting her stance to allow Camilla full visibility in the press shots. Some called it deference, others called it strategy, but all agreed it was poised and calculated. That move instantly changed the energy. Camilla appeared isolated, framed next to the king, but surrounded by silence. The very crowd she had once longed to win had now chosen a different queen in their hearts. What the public didn't see was the eruption behind closed doors. As the family left the balcony, Camilla's senior aide reportedly confronted her in a private corridor, visibly shaken and furious. The queen consort snapped back, insisting it was her right, that she would not be silenced or made invisible. "I will not be erased," she is said to have declared, her voice rising. But the damage was done not just to her image, but to the palace's entire crisis management plan. Within hours, a team of press officers scrambled to write a statement. A minor scheduling confusion and an unexpected gesture of unity. No mention of defiance, no admission of rebellion. And yet, in the aftermath of Camilla's public rebellion, it would be her own body that betrayed her. Hours after her defiant balcony moment, Camilla collapsed in her private quarters at Clarence House. The palace immediately initiated protocol, but it was a quiet phone call from her physician to Prince Charles that forced the monarch to face a devastating decision. The moment came without warning, though many around her had feared it for weeks. Camilla was found unresponsive by her senior aide shortly after returning from the Trooping the Colour appearance. Her blood pressure had spiked, her heart rate was erratic, and her breathing had become dangerously shallow. The on-site medical team rushed in, administering treatment and stabilizing her condition just enough to avoid a hospital transfer. But what had been a symbolic gesture of resilience on the balcony had, in truth, been the final crack in an already fragile frame. Her body had delivered the verdict her pride refused to accept. Dr. Hammond, whose earlier reports had been met with denial and quiet resistance, did not hesitate this time. He picked up the phone and called Prince Charles directly. His words were sharp, deliberate, and unvarnished. She must not continue, or she won't continue at all. There was no room left for gentle phrasing. Camilla's physical condition had deteriorated to a point where any further public exertion could prove irreversible. The physician's tone left no doubt. This was the line. And it had been crossed. Charles, already emotionally frayed from weeks of mounting pressure, was shaken. The man who had once defied tradition to place Camilla at his side was now faced with an impossible crossroad: choose the woman he loved, or preserve the monarchy they had both fought to uphold. The anguish was written across his silences, his hesitation, his inability to respond. He remained seated long after the call had ended, motionless, consumed by the weight of his crown and the fragility of the woman who had stood beside him through every storm. Behind the scenes, the palace moved swiftly. Senior aides were informed through an internal channel flagged Red Priority. Drafts for a public statement were discreetly circulated, never directly mentioning retirement, but phrased as a temporary adjustment of duties on the advice of Her Majesty's medical team. William and Catherine were notified through private dispatch. Though they made no immediate comment, sources suggest the tone of the update left no doubt this was not about a break. It was about a beginning of an ending. One carefully managed, but irreversible all the same. Palace officials scrambled to control timing, tone, and optics. Discussions began around succession optics, how Catherine's increased presence could be framed as continuity, not replacement. The line was thin, delicate, and dangerous. But the truth could no longer be concealed. Camilla's collapse had shattered the final illusion of strength. She had fought to remain relevant, but in doing so, had crossed the limits of her endurance. And as Charles finally accepted the truth, it would be the crown, not Camilla, that would announce what came next. It was brief, understated, and unprecedented. The palace's official release cited health-focused retreat, but everyone knew what it meant. Camilla was stepping back indefinitely, and the unspoken message was louder. Catherine had become the monarchy's true central force. The statement landed at precisely 9 a.m., distributed across official palace channels with clinical precision. It was worded carefully, with all the palace's classic euphemisms: on medical advice, temporary adjustment, and continued support of Her Majesty's well-being. But between the lines, it was unmistakable. Camilla was gone, not ceremonially, not in disgrace, but in silence. The statement confirmed she would no longer attend 3 of the year's most significant royal events, including the upcoming state banquet, the Royal Commonwealth Service, and a scheduled diplomatic tour. Her calendar, once filled with engagements designed to solidify her role as Queen Consort, was now cleared, and there was no return date. The reaction was immediate. Within minutes, the digital sphere ignited. Hashtags surged across social media, some expressing sympathy for Camilla's health, but far more focused on what the announcement truly symbolized. Number Catherine Rees's, number New Queen Era, and number royal shift began trending globally. Commentators and insiders flooded the airwaves with analysis. What had been whispered in corridors and speculated behind curtains was now happening in real time. The public, knowingly or not, had witnessed a transfer of power without the crown ever moving. Camilla had become invisible, and Catherine had stepped into the light not by proclamation but by presence. The rebalancing was swift. Within hours of the statement, Catherine's updated schedule was quietly released to Commonwealth advisors. She would now take the lead on several major patronages previously held by Camilla, including the Queen's Reading Room and Women of the Commonwealth Trust. These weren't simply appearances, they were signals. Signals that the institution had made a choice. That its future wasn't waiting on timing. It was already unfolding. The optics were controlled, but undeniable. Every quiet move in Catherine's favour now carried the weight of inevitability. What surprised many, however, was the tone of public response. Camilla, once heavily scrutinised, was not vilified. Her retreat evoked sympathy, not scorn. There was no media circus, no dramatic condemnation, just the soft sound of a curtain falling on a chapter that had been difficult from the start. Meanwhile, Catherine, poised, composed, unshaken, was applauded not only for her grace but for her restraint. She made no comment, issued no statement, and appeared only once that day at a charity event where she thanked volunteers and left quietly. But the message had already been received. She didn't need to say a word. As for Charles, his silence spoke volumes. He was not seen for 48 hours following the statement. Sources later confirmed he remained at Berkhole, reviewing documents and refusing all media contact. Some believe he was mourning the loss of Camilla's reign. Others believe he was preparing for what must come next. But while the monarchy publicly rebalanced, one moment remained unseen, a private encounter between two women whose rivalry had changed history. It wasn't televised, it wasn't recorded. But according to palace insiders, Catherine's unannounced visit to Clarence House was the final chapter in a royal conflict that had shaken the crown. What was said behind that closed door may never be revealed, but its impact rippled far beyond. The car arrived without fanfare. No press detail was alerted, no aides escorted her inside. Catherine had requested complete discretion. She entered Clarence House through a private entrance, and within moments, the door was sealed behind her. For 27 minutes, two women so often cast as rivals sat alone, away from the noise, away from the optics, and away from the world. And though no one in the royal household dares reveal what passed between them, what happened afterward said more than any briefing ever could. Camilla was seen minutes later by a longtime staff member, red-eyed, visibly shaken, but not angry. There were no slammed doors, no raised voices, no retreated demands for isolation. Just silence. And in that silence, something deeper had shifted. Some speculated it had been a confrontation, years of suppressed resentment finally brought into the open. Others whispered it was an apology, quiet and painful, from one woman who had endured too much to another who had risen too far. But among those closest to the crown, the most enduring belief was this: not of position, but of resistance. And perhaps a passing of legacy without ever needing to say the words. Palace sources later described the meeting as a gesture of compassion, not conquest. There was no press release, no photo opportunity, no staged narrative. It didn't need one, because within days of that encounter, every major royal briefing began shifting its language. The Queen Consort was now resting in private, while the Princess of Wales would continue in her expanded role. And just like that, the monarchy moved forward elegantly, strategically, and without a backward glance. The winds had changed, and the institution had chosen its new centre of gravity. This was not a story of overthrow. It was a story of succession, not in title, but in influence. And Catherine, who had risen with careful silence and unwavering purpose, now stood unchallenged at the heart of the modern monarchy. Not because she had demanded the spotlight, but because she had earned it step by step, moment by moment, crisis by crisis. Camilla, once the symbol of royal endurance, had bowed not to scandal or shame, but to exhaustion. Her reign had not ended in disgrace, it had ended in acceptance, and as the crown reconfigures in silence, the world is left asking, was this the end of Camilla's reign, or the beginning of Catherine's true ascendancy? Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.